Everyone, it's Sleepy Reader. I've located to a messy part of our dining room because it's too hot upstairs in my second story cave. I have some comic book thoughts for you. I have a beer that I think is probably not very good, left here by a friend of mine a few weeks ago, but I have no other beer, so I thought I'd try this Sockeye Lucky Peak Pilsner. I don't know where it's from. The name like that. Idaho handcrafted beer. But I think I've tasted this before when my friend was here, and I didn't think it was much different than a Bud. Let's see. Yeah, it's kind of a Budweiser type of beer. It has a bit of a stronger taste than Budweiser, but not my usual. I'm not a Pilsner drinker, I guess, so how can I judge? So I got a bunch of comic books that I wanted to talk about. I keep putting off doing a big talk about, or big video about Rebirth. So these are still more non-Rebirth. Basically, I don't think any of these are big two comics. Mostly stuff I enjoyed. A few complaints about some things. I'm going to talk about Kill or Be Killed right at the end, because I think I'm going to be a bit spoilerish on Kill or Be Killed. I don't think I'm going to give a lot of important spoilers about any of the rest of these. But if you haven't read Kill or Be Killed, when you see me start talking about Kill or Be Killed, you might want to stop watching. So first up here, I've got Conan the Slayer, which I think I was excited on. I thought I read Simon Bisley was going to be doing the art. I don't think he even does the cover. Who does the cover is Lee Bermejo. I don't know where I got Simon Beasley. Or maybe it was someone else. Anyway, something excited me about this. Part of it was Colin Bunn writing. I thought there was a good chance of something good going on here. And I put it on my pull list at my shop. And while I could just remove it now, I feel like I should give it a few more issues since I asked them to put it on the pull list. But this first issue was not that promising. I think the biggest disappointment is the art on the inside. Not to slam artists, but Sergio Davila, or however you would say his name, is just doing, at best, kind of a workmanlike job. It's not embarrassingly bad or anything, but there's nothing that gets my artistic juices going. And I think often one of the good things about Conan is different artists' takes on how to do Conan. I feel like the only takeaway here is mostly just to do it really bloody. Lots and lots of gore. The characters, we have characters that are from different, I don't want to say racial groups, but different types. Like if you were going from Italy to Germany to France or something, people would maybe have a bit of a different look, or maybe even more extreme changes between there. But the artist doesn't have any consistency there about people from different groups and what they look like. Except that Conan has long black hair and no one else really does have hair quite like him or something. But let's see. Here, can you tell which people are from different tribes? Now, that's just being picky, but it's just one of the things I noticed in the many ways that I was not excited about the art. And you can see the coloring is not super great either. There's kind of a tonal evenness to it all. So all in all, the art and color do not bring alive what should be the kind of exotic, exciting world of Conan. And then Colin Bunn, I feel like he's not taking Conan seriously. He's giving us the cliche of Conan, and he's not working very hard to go beyond that. He thinks he's being clever by doing some overdone prose about it here and there, and just kind of a simple but obvious Conan story where, Conan is tougher than everyone else, but with his back up against the wall. So maybe Colin Bunn has something bigger planned here that will get more interesting, but right now, just kind of, almost Conan making fun of itself. Conan's an easy thing to get into self-parody anyway, I suppose. But usually with the better Conan, the writer and or the artist is really into it and is making something of it. And clearly I've been reading Conan all my life. Pretty much there's something there, but it's not really there in this Conan. On the other hand, speaking of making fun of Conan, Sergio Aragonés's brand new Groo's Fray of the Gods. A guy in my comic book shop, not while I was buying this comic, told me that Sergio Aragonés was dead, but I think he was misinformed. Certainly, this is marvelous stuff. I think it's basically Sergio Aragonés' story with some script assist from Mark Evinger, and then great coloring, and I think the coloring's Tom Luth, and great lettering from Stan Sakai. Yeah, colorist Tom Luth. The colors are always great on these Dark Horse versions of Groo. So Aragonés, if anything, even though he's been doing Groo for like 30 years or something, is just funnier than ever. And his art still has that Sergio Aragonés look. There's really nothing lacking, despite the fact that he's either dead or probably more at the age most people would be retired. But I really love this, and it's making fun of religion, but not in a way that I think could offend anybody, because it's more making fun of mythological religion, let's say, and maybe of the worst sides of religion and people's impulses to use religion for power. So yeah, I don't think it would be offensive to anybody religious, whatever, and it's hilarious. It's wonderful. I love it. It was one of the best comics I read this month. I'm going up and down here. Black Science is a little bit down. I enjoy this, and it's still worth getting. Matteo Scalera's, still a marvelous artist. Maybe I misread this from the beginning because I thought it was a science fiction story, and it just doesn't feel like a science fiction story anymore. And it also kind of played itself as a psychological story, but it's almost like a joke psychological story at this point, because things go so wrong for our character, and it's so obviously manipulated by the writer to go wrong for him and to just always make him a fool at this point. I didn't perceive it that way at the beginning, maybe in the first 15 issues or so, but it's gotten more and more like that for me now. I'll still keep getting it, but it's not really one of my favorite books anymore. I'm just I find it interesting. It's sort of like I'm having to shift my idea of what kind of book it is. I don't think it wants to explore the science fiction. I'm not sure what it's trying to explore at this point, except for maybe a satire of how effed up somebody could be. I don't think it reflects on the morality of science or what a scientist is like anymore, if it ever did. So anyway, interesting comic, but what's it about? Of course, I don't have to know what a comic's really about to enjoy it if it's done right. Paper Girls 8, we're deeper and deeper into a very confusing story that is very much science fiction and has psychological elements. But I couldn't tell you, what the big idea is here, really. I mean, obviously time travel's involved. And I couldn't tell you yet what he wants to say about life, although I think it has a lot to do about getting older and expectations versus who you are. There's some interesting twists about, what if you know about your future? What will that do? Although we are told in this issue, I think, well, I won't say anything more. But another great issue, again, especially if you're a fan of science fiction, I think. Science fiction that has a lot of character to it. And, of course, if you're a fan of great Cliff Chiang art and, the wonderful rhythm of Brian K. Vaughan, whatever Brian K. Vaughan, they don't even put their credits on the cover anymore. Well, they do on the back cover. They're too confident to need the popularity of Paper Girls, I suppose, to need to advertise on the front who's doing it. But Brian K. Vaughan, even in stories where I'm a little dubious, like what was the one where he had America attack Canada? We Stand on Guard. Even ones like that where I'm a little dubious about the thematic material or the reality, the rhythms, the pacing, the music of Brian K. Vaughan's scripts comes through in anything he does. And on top of that, he gets great artists who add their own wonderful rhythm and music to the comics too. So it's just a pleasure to immerse myself in that Paper Girls music. You would think I could say the same thing about Black Science, but it just seems more herky-jerky. There's beautiful art, but Rick Remender is just all over the place here, I feel. Maybe he didn't, when he started it, he didn't expect it to be successful enough to keep going for such a long time and didn't have as clear of a long-term plan. I don't know. Pure conjecture. Okay. Maybe one of the themes of this video is things are bloody. There was that Conan. There's a bit of bloodiness in Paper Girls. There's an incredible amount of bloodiness in Lady Killer, and they certainly let us know that from the cover. I hope my daughter doesn't stumble across this cover. It'll probably give her nightmares. I still love the art. I'm kind of sad Laura Allred isn't the colorist, but the new colorist, Michelle Madsen, is quite good. So I don't think we're losing out. The art is still served very well by the color. So now our main character, who was kind of an assassin for an agency, which I thought was actually like a government secret agency, but maybe not. Maybe it was just a general assassination, is now a freelance assassin. So she has to take care of everything herself, including the really gross chopping up of bodies afterwards and hiding the pieces. I'm not sure, there's a little bit of she's killed someone because she was hired by an heir of that person, who was being made to jump through hoops to collect his inheritance or to be put in the will. I don't know why that person would want her disappeared. You might want it to look like she died in an accident or something. But anyway, that's being very picky. I enjoyed Joelle Jones as her own writer without a co-writer is still doing an awesome job. I enjoyed this issue a lot. I'm curious to see where it goes. It definitely picks right up from the previous Lady Killer. You don't have to have read it to read this, but if you have read it, it will fit in, lock in like a puzzle with what happened previously. I do feel like I don't want endless, like there's sort of a humor in the grossness here, but I feel like I don't want endless issues like this. I want to see the story move on in other ways with aspects of her marriage and her neighbors and her mother-in-law and all of that being as important as all the killing and such. Okay, here's one I loved in a pure, unadulterated way. It's kind of interesting. This is issue 3 of Future Quest, written by Rick Parker, drawn by various people. I think the main artist is not in this issue, but we'll be getting back to him in future issues. This is kind of a pause issue, which is odd on issue 3, where we go back and get 2 11-page stories about different Hanna-Barbera characters and sort of bringing them up to the present sort of the storyline. And it works really well. These are really good. But I'm not sure why they're doing this on issue 3. It might make sense on issue 5 or 6. But still, I loved it. And I particularly loved I keep getting ads in the picture. I don't want to distract. I kept loving the layouts and the panels and the artwork by Steve Rude. I don't think this is 100% Steve Rude. Like, it's simpler Steve Rude, but it's still super awesome, and the story just is so great because he's drawing it. And Rick Parker, whatever his name, Parker, is doing a fine job. And Jeff Parker, I don't know why I'm saying Rick Parker. Jeff Parker is the writer on all of these. And Aaron Lopresti does the, I think it's pencil. No, Carl Kessel is the inker. Anyway, this is a really enjoyable Herculoid story, which is giving us kind of the origin of this Herculoid group, or kind of why they're all together. And it's really good. It's really a really good kind of cartoonish sci-fi story. I hope for more. I'd be happy if this continued just from these stories, but I think we'll be going back to the main story with Johnny Quest and all these people appearing on our Earth, and maybe we'll get more flashbacks to stories of these. But they really work well. Great 11-page stories. You don't see that very often. Great art. Aaron Lopresti is someone I sometimes like and sometimes don't, and this is definitely really great Aaron Lopresti. Also with good colors from Hi-Fi. Steve Bucalato colored the Birdman one, and that is also extremely well colored. So all around, this Future Quest for me is an extremely pleasing product. In a way, because the little bit of Hanna-Barbera cartoons I've read always seem to have so much potential, but were always very frustrating. And this, I kind of get the potential of what those characters and stories and backgrounds could have been in this comic. So I really love that. Another comic book that I absolutely loved, Jupiter's Legacy 2, Issue 2. I don't think I got around to giving you my thoughts on Issue 1 of Jupiter's Legacy, but my main thought is, or maybe I did talk about it a little bit, but my main thought is that Frank Quietly is better than ever. I mean, his visual storytelling is so compelling, so beautiful to look at, the simplest panel. And on top of that, I feel like he now has a better colorist for his work. I know that there's the colorist on the previous Jupiter's Legacy series was the same one on Superman, All-Star Superman, and he's a great colorist, but I like this colorist even more for Frank Quietly. His name is Sonny Go, or Gaho, Gho. But there's just such awesome stuff here throughout. It's just, I'm just in comic book heaven reading this Jupiter's Legacy. I would say that Mark Millar is writing a very good story, a very good, a slight deconstruction of superheroes story. What if one of the superheroes, we've seen it before, certainly. What if the superheroes, like in Authority and such, what if the superheroes decide to run the world, or in Squadron Supreme? But we're getting the aftermath of that now in Jupiter's Legacy 2, and the rebellion against it, and it's just done so beautifully. The pacing is incredible. I'm loving it. I think, what is it, going to be 6 issues, then it'll be done, and then we'll have to wait another 2 years for Frank Quietly to draw more if he hopefully continues. I have the trades of the Jupiter's Circle ones, but I haven't read them yet, so I don't know if that will deepen my grokking of the story, but I just love it. I do think you should read Jupiter's Legacy first, and that's available in a $10 trade, so that's very cheap and affordable. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. One interesting thing here about politics. I've been seeing sort of, maybe because of here in the U.S. and in Britain because of the Brexit, sort of more political jabbing going on the internet than I normally notice. The attacking of the social justice warrior, which has kind of become the symbol of the wrong way to be a liberal, perhaps. And I watched my friend Rorschach with some numbers, fellow in England, who's very much a conservative now, critique comic books, and I find that very interesting, although I sometimes say, because I'm kind of liberal / a little bit libertarian. I sometimes say, that's a correct critique of some wrong-headed thinking behind the scenes of, the accepted liberal stance or whatever. And other times I say, nah, you're just kind of going way overboard. But anyway, what I thought was interesting is in this and a couple other comics, we get kind of, like in the 1%, we get the liberal who uses violence to achieve their means, often very brutal violence. So in here, we get the superheroes who've taken over the world have mostly what you would call very liberal stances. Some maybe extreme liberal, like I think they're outlawing religion, and they're trying to make all economics, economic equality and all kinds of things like that. But in the end, they're using violent means, and the violent means are leading to more violent means. It might be almost a critique of the Soviet Union in its heyday. But combine that with other things like the 1%, which is all about, the most richest people in the world are so evil that all you really can do is kill them, is kind of the message of the 1%. And when I talk about killer to be killed, I sensed that kind of thing. But whether Mark Millar is critiquing liberal behavior or what he's up to politically, I don't know. I know he always kind of publicly presents himself as a very liberal, sort of British socialist type of person or Scottish socialist type of person. I don't know what that really means, because it would maybe mean something different in the U.S. than here. But here it seems like he's attacking liberals. I don't know. I think it's fun reading, and I don't know if it really is attacking liberals, but it's just interesting food for thought. Kill or Be Killed. So this was my highly enjoyable but highly problematic comic of the week, or whatever period of time it's been since I read it. It's the new Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, Elizabeth Breitweiser comic that they're saying is going to be an ongoing. It's not slated to have a specific ending, like The Fade Out was 15 issues or something like that. And even the one they did before that it was long, but it had an ending to it. So we have this person who is a vigilante killing, I guess, what are mobsters, as far as I can tell. I almost wonder if it's later going to turn out to be that they're something different than he's claiming they are. But in his voiceover monologue, he's talking about how crappy the world is. Terrorists blow up airports and stations. Cops kill innocent black kids and get away with it. The Middle East is one nuke away from turning us all into dust. Psychopaths run for president. I guess now that I reread that, it's like a mixture of liberal and conservative complaints. But at the time I first read it, it was kind of like, here's this guy who's basically a liberal who's decided to become a vigilante. I don't know whether he really is technically liberal, but he's this kind of graduate student in New York City type of guy. But of course, later in the comic, we find out that he has become a serial killer, apparently because... So here, I'm really going to spoil it. Apparently because this demon is forcing him to. We'll learn more in issue 2, and maybe it'll take other twists. But when the demon came along, I was like, oh, God. This is a really bad plot idea, and it particularly... it feels kind of old-fashioned, like maybe, I don't know, EC Comics and other things. And just a horror comic cliche and a horror story cliche. And certainly the kind of gimmick for a story that lasts for a short story, for a few issues maybe. There's not enough meat there. So it's really surprising to me that this is an ongoing, and it surprised me that Ed Brubaker went to the demon is making me kill people kind of thing. There is a hint, maybe he thinks maybe he's crazy and there isn't really a demon. I still enjoyed it a lot, and I had a problem with the coloring. I felt it was a little muddier, and I really liked Elizabeth Breitweiser's coloring on The Fade Out, which had all kinds of subtle techniques to capture mood and stuff, and this seemed heavy-handed with just dark colors and such. I mean, it's still very hard to color a picture like that, I'm sure, but it just didn't seem as good and it was one of the first things that struck me as I was reading it. Hey, the colors don't thrill me as much as they did in their previous series. The line work is excellent, and his ability to capture New York City, and I believe he's a Brit. It feels like this is someone who's lived in New York City for a long time who's drawing it, and so I see a lot of comics where I'm pretty unimpressed by the way they do the city, like recently in Green Arrow with Seattle and other things like that. But this is a wonderful set of urban, New York City specific kind of scenes and images. So I'll keep getting this. There's lots to be enjoyed from Sean Phillips's art. Ed Brubaker's always an interesting writer. I wonder if he got himself off track here, especially the idea of doing this as an ongoing. But yeah, that's part of my week of reading comic books. There's also been a lot of DC Rebirth, and I've read so much of it I don't even know how to talk about it anymore. But hopefully I will do a video on that fairly soon. Talk to you all later.